Hey everybody, we're live. Welcome to the indie event. It's our turn. Let me explain to you first what Comic Book Advocates is. So stay tuned. We got some great guests. Welcome to the show. And here we go. ComicBookAdvocates.com is the global digital Comic-Con, but it's more than that. And you can be more too. Be more than just a fan. Become an advocate for comics like ComicBookAdvocates.com is for their creators, for their crowdfunding, for the very books they're creating. Because we love comics. And we're not kidding about that. And we love the creators too. So let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. Everyone knows who I am because they're watching on my channel. You don't really need me to introduce myself. You're tired of me. You've seen me all weekend. Let's bring in new blood. Let's go around the room.
Hey, so this is Milan Kovacs from Hungary. I'm the writer and co-creator of All Star, what is, this comic. And we started to call it a graphic novel because we are planning to expand to 52 pages. So I'll give the word to somebody else now, if that's okay.
Oh, it's me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you. Hear us.
Okay, my name is Steve Fabian, and I'm the artist on All Star and also the co-creator. And that's about it, I guess. Give it to Tomi.
Okay. Hey everyone, I'm Tomi and I'm the colorist.
All right. Welcome to
what a big introduction.
That's okay. I mean, that's the parts you guys play in the project. It's important parts. So let's get down to the project itself. Let's talk about All Star. You guys are on Kickstarter. You've already funded. Congratulations. You've already goal. So let's bring up what we're looking at today so you guys can be part of this. And here we go. Now, the one thing that we noticed when we played this in the video, you guys have a really good idea about what this story is about, but you don't talk about that in your video. You don't open with it.
Yeah, we are kind of lame in that way.
So can you tell the audience that's tuning in exactly what this book's for?
Yes, of course. So All Star, Not All Stars Are Bright is like a graphic novel now. I can say that about a roughly 14-year-old kid who's being bullied at school and by classmates and by the teachers alike. And then he starts to, his dream starts to become to be a comic book artist. But it isn't easy, and he's still bullied, and he still has a lot on his mind. And somehow these things, these fictional and realistic things, and the reality he lives in, it starts to mesh up. And then he just, to the point, he just doesn't even know where he is anymore. Is he fictional? Are the people around him fictional? Is he real? Anything is real, anything is fictional. He doesn't really know what happens around him anymore. And that's what the story is about. So it's a kind of how to grow up and how not to grow up kind of story. If that makes any sense.
It absolutely does. And it's very exciting. And what other exciting thing we have? Victor Dandridge is joining us.
Hello.
Oh, hey.
What's going on, brother? Introduce yourself. Tell everyone what you're working on.
Sure. Victor Dandridge, the hardest working man in comics. Proprietor of Vantage House Productions, my self-publishing imprint, and You Create Comics, which is a fun project-filled activity line to help kids specifically make their own comics and integrating comics and education.
And I think it's awesome you show up right now because we were just talking about kids getting bullied in school.
Oh, wow.
And I know that's like a big deal, especially with comic books. How many of us in this room use comic books to escape? I know I did. Like when I was younger, I escaped the world I was living in to go to a better world in the pages of comic books.
Yes, indeed. 100%. Matter of fact, the fourth issue of Wonder Care, shout out to Justin Castaneda on that one, deals with bullying and the presence of a new kid who kind of lashes out as a bully because he's afraid of getting picked on himself. So, yeah, definitely have used that as a conversation point.
and they have this amazing comic book. So the basic idea is that this kid is going around the world, and he's kind of daydreaming, would you say, right? To avoid the bullies, he's kind of escaping to this world, and then he gets stuck in whether or not the world is real or not, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he makes up these characters about his classmates, his teachers, and as a reader, the reader, I mean, you, the backers, the future and current backers, you have to decide who is real, what exact I don't know accidents really happen, or they're just in Jimmy's mind. Jimmy Hand, sorry, he's the main protagonist of this story.
And let me ask you a question. When it comes to creating something like this, I know I was bullied growing up. I wasn't this big when I was younger, so I was very small. I was very small, and I got bullied. Do you ever talk about the other side of it? Because I know bullying, the one thing we talk about now is the fact that the bullies themselves sometimes get bullied at home. Is that anything that you actually kind of check in on? Are there any stories you guys are thinking about doing the other side where a bully is having something happen at home and they are dealing with it, I guess?
It's always me talking, but actually we don't plan to stop at this point. So this comic, this graphic novel gets funded, and then we plan on going to do a sequel to this comic. So when I say all star, not all stars are bright, it's just the all star is the title, and then it's gonna have another title for the sequel. So we are definitely going to explore what you just mentioned about the other side, how bullies get made and stuff like that. Yeah, it's actually a really good idea, and thank you for mentioning it.
I definitely think, and I think we can all agree, as comic book creators, our job is to entertain, distract, and I gotta say, I'm happy to see you talking about bullying because I don't think we offer enough content. Victor Dandridge stands out as someone I know who's offering content to all ages to get kids to be motivated, whether it be a comic book or that wonderful You Create comics. Can you just tell us a little bit about that because this is something that can help bullied kids. And I have a soft spot. Of course, I created a comic book myself about a farting elephant that teaches morals with farts. So it's important to me that we get the kids back into reading comics. They're our future. We're not giving them enough to read. So thank you all for giving content that reaches out to teens and kids. So walk us through You Create, Victor.
Yeah, I didn't like to read as a child, and You Create Comics is kind of my answer to all of that because it was comics that changed everything. And I know that there are other kids in the world like that that need something that resonates and relates to them in a sense that they enjoy it. And by creating their own comics, I think that kids will read more comics, and it's a way to really kind of see the future of the comic book reading generation, because that's really what we're looking for. We need more people to be involved and to actually get interested in the field, the genre. I mean, all types of comics, not just superheroes, but every level. And if you're creating things, you're more likely to go, discover and find other pieces that come before you that will inspire you. So that's really what it's all about. It's all about, seeing the future.
And this isn't just a concept. You've actually taken this into the real world, to classrooms, interacted with children. How excited do children get when they get to see that they can actually create their own world?
Oh my God, it's the greatest thing in the world, because a lot of these kids are peripherally aware of comic books. Obviously, we're in a day and age now that they're more prevalent. You got the movies, the cartoons and things like that, which is great. But the idea that they can be empowered to do it themselves is not something that they even think about unless you have that rare kid that's like, oh, I'm already creating books. And I'm like, awesome. Here is just more material or tools to help you do it. Like, it's not even saying like, the stuff that you've done before doesn't count. This is just to help you do it more often, So it's a wonderful experience to see people relate to that. And I'm looking at the All-Star Kickstarter thing now, and I'm definitely going to back this, because I think that's something I would love to bring to kids as well, is to say, here are stories that are about using comics to, you know, empower yourself. It's all about that self-empowerment, and I adore that.
Thank you, Victor.
You're very
Actually, if I can have just a sentence, we actually had a 14-year-old, an actual 14-year-old Hungarian boy, to draw the comic pages. The guy, the young guy, draws in the comic. So it's kind of a metaphysical thing that we hired a 14-year-old boy to do the kid drawings in there. So this guy is Armin Kraus, and he's way past his time because it's 10 p.m. here. But and he's a professional. I don't even remember. I think he skates. I think he skates. So he's a professional skater. So he has to be bad at these things. Yeah. Thank you.
I love to hear when kids are interacting with Incom. That's why I love Victor. I love following him, because you see that positivity in the world, and we need so much of that. We need that turned all the way up, showing the next generation matters. He's a great parent to himself. I see how he interacts with his kid. You know, and I always say, follow people you want to be like. Don't hang out with the people you don't want to be like. So Victor's one of those guys. I mean, he's got a little beef with Watson right now going on, a little
man,
rivalry going on, but. You know, it's fun. It's back and forth. But Victor's definitely one of those energetic creators. And so are you guys. I mean, talking about bullying, there's nothing sexy about that. You can't put an alt cover up with some woman with big boobs. There's no cheap way to go around it. You know, you actually have to, and even with you create comics, you have to go out there and you have to remind people, hey, kids are our future. No, it's not a slogan, but it's actually the truth. And if you just look at this generation coming up now, and I'm not digging on them, but they don't know the things we knew. I drank out of a garden hose. You know, I was outside. I don't know about you, but I was outside until it got dark. Like, I didn't go home until it got, like, that was the time. When do I got to be home? When that sun comes down, yo ass better be in the house. But it was. And now you get kids who are on their video games and all this, and it's even worse for kids who get bullied. It follows them home. It follows them home. Someone's texting them. Someone's writing on their Facebook pages. I think this is a perfect time for kids to get lost in comics. And we have the opportunity to show them it gets better, because we all got bullied, and now we're creating comics, and we're saying, hey, here's a lifeline. Here's that lifesaver. Don't let go. Don't give up. It gets better. So, I mean, I got bullied growing up. I'm very thankful that you guys are doing what you're doing, because you guys give a skate. Do you guys just want to talk about why you think it's important to write these types of stories in your own words? We'll go around the room. For me, I write the stories because I want someone to not feel alone. Basically, that's it. I want them to know they're not alone. I went through it. I got bullied. I got beat up, and I survived, and I'm here now, and I create great content. So hopefully that's an inspiration. And I've had, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, of course, because a young lady was crying in my arms. I got permission from the parents, but she wanted a hug, and she cried because the story moved her so much that she bought 2 copies to give one to her best friend. I was like, you can't, like, that's a moment that I don't care how much money I make the rest of my career. That's a defining moment in my career, is that I moved someone so much that they didn't feel so alone in the world. And I really hope I get to see. That's one of the things that sucks about not going to cons. We can't go back and visit the same places to meet them again and see where they are this year in their journey. Because she said she wanted to start writing, and I was like, please write anything and bring it to me. So I know I'm going back to that state, and I hope I see her again to see what she's creating. What do you guys think? We'll go around in the room one by one, and I'll lift you up so you can see.
Actually, All Star is kind of autobiographical. So when I wrote it, I tried to have some points from my life from primary school, high school, and stuff. That were really hurting me. There were these guys who didn't really like me. It's not exactly the same story as Jimmy's story in the book, because I was disliked because I was a good learner, interestingly. And I was always bullied the other way. So I wasn't the not so clever kid or the slow learner kid. I was the guy who didn't really have to study to earn the grades. and in a way that was also, I mean, it's somehow, for me it seemed like an even worth thing to be bullied for something you are good at. So for me, I would say this sums it up. So,
well, thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us today. All right, Fabe, what do you? Is it Fabe?
Well, Fabian, but
Maybe okay, Fabian, you're up.
it's Steve Fabian, but they usually call me Fabe ever since art school. So anyway, when it comes to bullying, I can tell you my story that I was bullied by teachers most of the time, and the reason was that I was born in the USA back in 1974, and in 1978 we moved to Hungary, which was back then it was a communist country, and all the teachers basically, me and my sister were bullied by the teachers because the teachers didn't like us because I was born in the USA. It was kind of funny in a way, I guess, but and I also when it comes to drawing, I think I was 4 years old when I started drawing, and I think the bullying is, I remember, well, that's a long story. Give it to Tomi, I guess, the word.
It's funny. It's an interesting story because my actual parents come from my mother comes from the Ukraine. So when she came to America, they got bullied in America from being from a communist country because my mother still had accent.
And I can tell you that when I was 14 years old, we moved back to the USA, and I was bullied by the American kids because I couldn't speak English. I remember when I first arrived to the country, my parents took me to the first supermarket they found in New Jersey, and they told me like, okay, now you're gonna start working, and if somebody asks you, like any questions or anything, because I couldn't speak any English, they said just say I can't speak English. And basically, the second day I arrived to the U.S. and I couldn't speak any English, I was working in a supermarket, and I had to go to school, and in school they were bullying me because I couldn't speak any English, but my grades were actually better in English than their grades. It's kind of funny. And I was bullied because of that. And my life was basically about bullying, I guess. So I'm not surprised I became a comic book artist, I guess. And when I graduated from high school, that's when I attended the Cuber school, I guess. But that's not a I think Tomi attended a Cuber school a few years later. I think back in I don't know how many years ago.
I graduated 5 years ago.
5 years. Okay, so you could be my son, I guess. I graduated back in '95, so I'm an old fart.
And have you experienced in your life bullying? Has that been something that inspired you to help with this project?
I mean, yes, unfortunately I did. And these stories were kind of hard to listen to because I wish it wasn't this common, because it kind of became a stereotype that the kid who likes comics in school is the unpopular one who gets picked on by the others. And in that way, I guess I'm also kind of a stereotype, it's a really bad thing. It shouldn't be this way. But the reason I was bullied, and it wasn't physical, so it took me a long time to actually realize that I was bullied because no one talked to me about this. This is why it was really nice to hear about what Victor is doing, for example, because when I was a kid, no one reached out to me to talk to me about stuff. I didn't have a different perspective, so I just knew that kids were being mean to me, but also because I was the most unpopular one, I kind of felt like I deserved it. I was bullied because I was really young. I was born in October, so I wasn't 6 years old yet when I started school, and that became a really big problem when everyone was turning into a teenager around me, and I was still basically a little kid. Everyone in my class was like a year or a year and a half older than I was, and suddenly I became this guy who no one wanted to talk to because like it was embarrassing, and I was given a lot of crap about that, and it was really bad. But because everyone was mean to me, I actually believed that something was wrong. I'm sorry, I'm spiraling.
No.
Say so much about this.
Tell that story.
Yeah, so unfortunately I can relate, and I am also working on a creator-owned story which deals, among other things, with bullying, and I guess at this point when I'm working on stories like this, sometimes I don't even feel like I'm at the point where I can be helping anyone. Like I think I just want to get this out of my system, and art is a really good way to transform these experiences into something positive, something creative.
Wow. I completely agree, and I really thank you for sharing that. And it just goes to show you how much bullying is really affected. I think creative kids always get it worse because we see the world differently. We really do. And Victor, how have your experiences been with bullying throughout your life?
I don't know that I was ever actually bullied. There were certainly more popular kids than I was. I was a skinny kid, but I managed to get along with most people, both on the more popular side and not the more popular side. And I think maybe that is part of what inspires me to do the things that I do, is to be an advocate for all people, especially those that can get bullied for these things, because it's to show them that they are something worthwhile, to show them that they do have skill sets that can benefit other people around them, and to cultivate those things, to say the world outside can be its own bully to you. And if you have that sense of self-worth, self motivation, all those things, you can achieve things beyond what the bullies say you can. I guess that's the closest thing that I can claim to have experienced in terms of bullying. I was 12, and my mother sat me down and said that, by the time you're 16, society says you're supposed to be dead or in jail. That's a huge, bullying aspect to the Black community as a whole. And obviously me being more of a comic book guy, there were certain aspects of 1990s Black teen culture that I was, somewhat exempt from because I didn't do those things. But that's probably the closest thing to bullying that I experienced, was a societal bullying of fear of a Black man. But even then, that's still, grounds for me to persevere, to uplift, and to bring people with me, to say, like, we are phenomenal things, as individuals, as creatives, as collectives, we are phenomenal, and we can do wonderful things when we put our minds to it. So, that's the beginning and end for me when it comes to bullying.
But I do think that society and bullying from society is a huge deal.
Yes, indeed.
And as comic book creators, even now, I think we still get bullied. We're going through this pandemic. We're going through this horrible time. Everyone's feeling it. We hear about all these people suffering. Comic book industry is ignored. Oh, they just make funny books. I guess we don't need funny books right now. And it's really good to see you guys still creating. I see it. I see the energy. None of you have stopped creating. You're out there. You're making a difference. Let me ask you a question. Do you guys do cons over? Because you are all located outside of the United States. Am I correct in that?
Yeah. All of us live in Hungary now.
Are there Comic Cons in Hungary?
Yes, there are.
That's cool.
It's just that, this year has been
2020.
Everything was canceled, but we usually do. It's much smaller than the US ones. Usually it's just a few thousand people, like maybe not even a few thousand, maybe like 1,500 or something like that. But we really enjoy doing it because we get to meet the fans. we have a small fan base. It's just a 10 million country, Hungary. But we always enjoy meeting the fans, especially the younger ones, because they are the future. They're our future in a way as well, because we always need new readers, new potential buyers, and not just for the money. Because if we did it for the money, we wouldn't do this job. Just, we really want to inspire new readers, especially young readers. And that's why we usually do conventions and festivals in Hungary, and sometimes abroad as well. We went to the UK a few times, and to Austria for Vienna Comics and Vienna Comic Con a few times as well. And I actually love going to conventions, to networking, meet other creators, and to try to promote my stuff. Even though when I don't have a table, I don't actually meet fans, but I always give away free copies to everyone interested and stuff like that. So, and Fabe also came with us to Vienna, so I'll give the word to him if. Oh. Do we have? It's stuff like. Do we have?
What's the question?
Huh? Sorry.
What's the question?
Oh, how your cons are over there?
Yeah.
Oh,
cons?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's nothing like in the US. I can tell you that. It's a much smaller. I mean, even the size of Hungary is like almost the size of, I don't know, like New Jersey or something. I don't know. It's a small country even in Europe, but well, I enjoy the cons. Even though this year I stayed away. I mean, we had to stay away basically. There are no cons, and I don't think there might be some cons in the fall, but because of the second wave, probably won't be any. So I think this year we're pretty much done with cons. So basically, we just talk on the internet, like to Facebook, and we chat, but we hardly meet in person anymore. Last time I met Milan in person was in March, basically. And I think Tomi is also not really moving around, I guess. This year, I don't know.
No,
so I give the word to him.
Go ahead. How's it your 2020 been, Tomi? I mean.
Well, probably very, very similar to everyone else's because we don't get to do much stuff. So, well, I'm actually really grateful to have this project to work on with Fabe and Milan because, the best thing to do during this pandemic and now that we can't really go outside and do stuff is to just keep busy. And I feel like working on a project like this is the best thing that we can do with our time. I felt like in the past couple of months when we weren't allowed to leave the house, this was the thing that really helped me keep it together, that I had enough projects to work on to be able to hold on to my sanity, because otherwise it would have really sucked.
Now, Victor, I know here in America, it's been, for cons, it's Armageddon. It really feels like Armageddon. I mean, we're doing this right now when Tampa Bay Comic-Con was supposed to be happening. We're actually closing out when this show, when it ends, or at 5 o'clock, because we might go a little over, would have been the end of Tampa Bay Comic-Con, and it's not there. How have you dealt with it? You're the hardest working man in comics. You have done everything at a Comic-Con. You've been a fan. You've been on a panel. You've been behind the scenes. You have been at a table. How has this been for you?
It's a unique experience for sure. You're really seeing those people that know how to hustle a little bit better than those that don't. Those that do are finding, new ways to stand out in spite of the fact that conventions aren't readily happening. And that's been refreshing to see people do things that stand out, to, share a spotlight, not only on themselves, but others, as you're doing right now, which I much appreciate. It's refreshing because it shows that the true leaders of this industry aren't those that sit back and allow the industry to happen for them or to them. They're the ones that want to do things for others, to really, put the industry on their shoulders, carry it over, the finish line of 2020, because, without you, everything kind of dies. We saw that with the comic shops closing. We had major publishers not producing work, distribution shut down. But for those of us that, especially in the indie community, it didn't stop. The party just got a little weirder, but we were still going to do our thing. We were still going to make sure that we were creating content. We were talking to people. We were sharing content, challenging each other. That was, really the basis for the little battle that I had with Mike was, let's shake some things up. Let's put some energy out here that's positive, fun, creative, and make each other laugh like we used to. Let's remember that though comics are a business, it is that escape. It is that joy. It's that fun thing that is pure entertainment that makes you super excited to do things, to have that question of who could beat who. Those are fun. Those are just outright, unbridled fun. And let's get back to that, despite what 2020 is trying to give us. Don't let 2020 be the bully. Okay. That's the bottom line. Don't let it happen.
We actually have a stretch goal 2021 when All Star passes on 2020. So it's an actual stretch goal for our Kickstarter.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Let's get there.
Yes, please. Yeah. He said, let's get there. It should be hashtag 2021. We even have an award that we do every year that we don't even know, like we're talking right now, how do we do an award show this year? And the first thing I said is we do it anyway. And there are people out there who are creating. Are we going to have the best con display? A couple of us went to a couple cons, like a couple of us have con pictures. There just might be less. You don't give up. You don't, just like when you got bullied in school, you kept going to school, you kept getting by. And we do have a great question for the not so happy hour. Have your bullies made it into your work? If so, how did you approach the character, the arc, and the name? Would you name a bully in your book after a real life bully? We'll go around the room in order and see. Go ahead and take it away. Were there any real bullies in your book?
That's a really good question, and I was actually rooting for you to read it out loud, because I can actually show you a substitute math teacher of mine.
Wow.
She's in the comic, and she's called Mrs. Rayner, and that's almost his real name, her real name. And she totally looks like this in person as well. And she is this vicious villain here. She's called Princess Monaco. And you have to read the book, of course, to know more about her. But she's my ex-substitute math teacher from high school. So the answer is yes. And I even named her just slightly different from her real name. And almost everything is the same about her, even her hairstyle, even the color of her hair in the colored book, which the Kickstarter is funding. And I think even the way she speaks is the same. I tried to mimic that in English as well. So my answer is this.
Fabian, have you had any of your bullies make it to your work?
In this comic?
Or in any comic? It doesn't have to be
any. I would say probably subconsciously probably did, I guess. In this one, not really. It's mostly it's Milan's story. I'm just drawing his ideas, but I did draw another comic book for 6 years called The Dark Age. That's on Comixology. I'm sure I mean, I drew like 300 pages of that in 6 years. I'm sure in those pages, I probably drew some of my bullying experiences in that. I think. I mean, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah,
How about you?
so like Fabe said, Milan is the writer of this book, and I'm just a colorist, so everyone knows that colorists don't really contribute to the story, but
I don't know about that because as a colorist, like you, I don't think colorist gets enough credit because when you
well,
see
I agree
something,
with that.
yeah, because you see the emotion in color. I think a lot of colorists can feel emotion in color. A really good colorist can say, hey, this needs a darker color right here to convey that particular moment. So I think that as a colorist, like you, when you feel something, you can be like, oh yeah, this is definitely the moment. That is something that is very important to go darker. So, and do you do beyond coloring, or are you also something else in the comic book field possibly that you might have worked on?
Yeah, I actually do a bunch of different stuff. So I started out as a colorist, but I have a graphic novel coming out in October in the US that I drew and colored, and I did the script. Well, it's an adaptation of The Phantom of the Opera, and it's like 120 pages, but I didn't write the story there. I just adapted the book, but I like writing stories for myself. Like I said, I'm working on a creator-owned book right now, or at least I'm developing it, and it also deals with bullying. But I didn't. It's weird to talk about that because no one has ever read that book, so I don't want to go too much into it. But I didn't feel like putting one of the people from my life into that book. Well, first of all, I didn't feel like giving anyone that kind of power. I felt like using the name and the likeness of someone that hurt me before would somehow feel like letting them win. I don't know why, but I just didn't want to do that. But like you said, when you're working on a story, whether as a writer, an artist, or a colorist, you just want to get the feel of the story that you're working on, and I think what you said is really true. When I'm coloring this book All Star, I am not just putting any color there. I need to know what the story is about. I need to understand it and most of all feel it and try to enhance the feel and the mood of what's going on, because I feel like that's how I can make an impact as a colorist on the story.
Can I add just one more sentence to Tomi's? So he's a little bit undervaluing himself. He was Kevin Eastman's and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles colorist for 4 years. And he's a pretty big name in the industry, and I'm really, really happy to work.
I'm not sure about that, but thank you for saying that.
Well, I mean, you work on things we all love. And like I said, colorists don't get enough credit. I've seen so many colorists just blow it away. Their particular touches, that just right shade can really change a story just in one somber moment. Especially like for me with the bullies, I tap into the memory. When I want to write a bad guy, I think of the bullies. I think of me being bullied, how I felt. That helps me. And like a few of you, I don't know if I'd give them the name. I might have the likeness, and I always say you don't want to piss off an artist because they'll draw you in your worst moment, and you don't want to piss off a writer because they'll make you a villain in a comic book, and it's true. It's absolutely true. How about you, Victor? You said you haven't really seen bullying, but like you said, the culture, the Black Lives Matter and all that, that's been boiling, that's been coming. And with the Samaritan, you touched on it beautifully. You showed, and I've said this, you showed an area that I grew up in. Like when I read that book, I see parts of the world I saw growing up in New York City, in Queens, New York, near Jamaica, Queens. That felt so real and so tapped in. Did any of that come from things you saw growing up? Like, was that like, I saw this type of business going on the street and I wanted to reflect it in my book?
I mean, there's some portions of it that, culturally speaking, yes, we're aware of it, even if you've never actually seen it. The biggest thing with the Samaritan was my own personal essay, we'll call it, on your sense of responsibility to the world that you exist in. And it's really about, again, like defying the notion that the society itself is the bully, finding ways to push back, fight back, there's levels of escalation throughout the whole thing that says just because there are individuals that seem like bullies to you doesn't mean that you have to give them that kind of power. We deal with domestic violence in that sense. That's definitely bullying on an emotional level, let alone physical level, and trying to encourage people to think like, okay, if you choose to be here, there is an essence that you can choose to not be here. Like that is a choice, and you can fight your way through it. It's smart to empower yourself with people that will support you in that move, but you can make that choice. Well, I believe in you. You have that power. Utilize it. Same thing with drug addiction. You can get beyond it if you have the right support structure. You make the choice that I'm going to get beyond this, and then build that sense of safety around you. You can do it. So we definitely try to deal with what I consider societal bullies. Speaking of the Black Lives Matter movement, we did a short 4-page story called What Matters, directly inspired by the death of George Floyd. And what we did was we talked about the notion, or the necessity even, of understanding what Black Lives Matters means as a concept. I'm not, co-signing any particular organization. That wasn't the point. It was the concept of saying people of all types matter, absolutely. But this is the problem. And this is what we need to address, is that it does not seem as though everyone has the same understanding that Black people matter. And that's what needs to be expressed. So, yeah, if there's anything that I can say that I've attributed to any particular bully, it is the societal thing. But I don't want to say that as though that's something special. I think that's what all comics try to do in some way, shape, or form. There's some aspect that the villain represents the worst part of humanity, and the heroes represent the best parts of humanity. And I'm just, adding my signature to my piece of that conversation.
And I think comics are very educational. It shows different parts of aspects of life. Because if you go up to someone and say, hey, Black Lives Matter, and they're like, no, all lives matter, there's an argument. But you hand them a piece of art and you go, just read this. Do me a favor, read this. You can open up so many things, like comic books with bullying. You read about bullying. We're not even talking about bullying from parents to kids. That's a real thing. Kids go home. Remember the bully at the very beginning of the show when we talked about the bullies in the home lives? We don't talk enough about that stuff, but comics do. Comics have always explored these things, and I'm blown away that as creators, we're so open. We bear our heart in comic books, and I thank you for making stories like that. Everyone on this panel today, you had an interesting question from a global perspective. Do you want to read that? It was from your watch party, Victor?
Yeah. So I got a watch party going. Shout out to Dr. Scott Jordan. He asked, and I'm paraphrasing this for time. We say we're all in this together during the pandemic as a phrase that politicians and other people use to try to foster a sense of community. And the question is that popular amongst pop cultural creators outside of the U.S.? That statement that we are all in this together.
So what do you guys think? Are you being told where you are that we're all in this together? Is that kind of being sold to you that, hey, you're not the only one dealing with this. The whole world is, our whole country is, our local countries, our local neighbor countries. Are you guys hearing that? Because in America, we keep getting told we're all in this together while the rich people are on yachts and we're in rowboats.
You have a rowboat? I don't even got that.
I had a hole. It sunk. I'm in the water, just trying to not drown.
I somehow thought it was about pop culture creators, or maybe I misheard or misread it.
No, absolutely pop culture creators. Like, do you guys have that same mentality of us all being in it together?
Yeah. If I can be first, maybe. In my experience, what I experienced since, I don't know, April or March, or when it started here in Hungary. I saw that a lot of books didn't get published that were solicited by bigger publishers here, but usually they are not indie publishers. They just translate and license stuff from the US or France or whatever country, and they publish it in Hungary as translated to Hungarian. But the indie publishers just went completely off. I mean, I don't even hear about them, or they don't really support us in any way during this campaign or anything like that. But the bigger publishers got other problems, as I see, and now I just we are just in a position that or readers support us, or newfound readers on Kickstarter support us, but the Hungarian comic community just ignores us. And the reason that is, I think, is just simply because they are jealous of our success, that we got funded in less than a week. And then we have this separate Hungarian crowdfunding page where the Hungarians can, in an easier way, can give us also donations for the book. And that works very, very well as well. And I just see the jealousy. But I have no idea if it would be the same if the virus wasn't here. So in a way, I can say that there is no community, no real supporting community here. In another way, I have no idea, because it's a special year.
Yeah, it's one way to put it.
Well said.
Fabe,
Yeah.
do you have anything to add to that?
So I would have to agree with Milan that the comic book community in Hungary is, I wouldn't say it's all together, but I guess in some way, maybe it's due to the virus. I don't know, but I've been noticing for the last couple of years that I haven't been enjoying it as much as I used to, I think, and I can't put my fingers on it why, but maybe one day I'll find out. I don't know about the jealousy. I mean, who knows? I don't know. I don't think people should be jealous jealous of a comic book artist. I mean, it's not like we're making a lot of money or anything. I mean, I don't know. And when it comes to the Black Lives Movement, I agree with all the things. Basically, the only thing I don't agree with is the looting. I'm not really understanding the looting part, but that's maybe because I live outside of the U.S. That's
Vic,
about it.
you want to touch that, or do you know?
Yeah. No, it's looting is a very questionable term, and it's only questionable with the actualization of it. So like, there's one of those things where looting is determined by who's doing it. Right? It's up there with like the difference between a freedom fighter and a terrorist. It's all about the perspective of the person that's calling it. So, say if there was a natural disaster and, you had to go and get some supplies, there's no real way for you to buy them. That is still technically looting, but nobody would ever say that. You know what I mean? Like when you watch zombie movies, and anytime you're going through the grocery store and they're trying to find whatever, supplies they can, that is technically looting, but that's never referred to in that case. Because of that difference, some people can use the act of looting, the act of rioting, as we'll call it, to undermine the positive movement moving forward. There are going to be some people that are going to take advantage, because unfortunately not everyone is good, not everyone is bad, and some people will fully take advantage of a situation, whether they are aligning with that movement or not. But that's one of the more questionable things is when you get to a looting scenario, a rioting scenario, it does become a question of perspective. And for the Black community, a lot of times what looting equates to is an argument that we don't own things ourselves. And so as part of the social contract, I'm borrowing heavily from Trevor Noah, as part of the social contract of equality that we're supposed to receive, if we don't receive it and we are treated as animals, then we will act as animals and then show you like, this is not what we do on a regular basis. So you shouldn't treat us as though that's what we do on a regular basis, or we will do this on a regular basis. And I think it's an interesting protest. It is what I call the pseudo last call kind of thing. Before all out war would happen, this is that statement to say that, if you keep treating us poorly, we will act poorly. And that's the ultimate pushback. You can ask peacefully, don't treat me poorly. But then there comes a time where for some people, fighting back is fighting back. And it's just a method of fighting back. But I can, again, like that's a matter of perspective. If you can't see, a benefit in that, I can totally understand, because there's a lot of things that, about it that I question, but I can understand the sentiment without necessarily condoning the action. So I totally get that.
Yeah, you always wonder, would Boston Tea Party be called looting?
Right. It absolutely would have. Absolutely.
Now, Tomi, you've worked in the American environment and the European environment during this. Have you been dealing with both cultures? Do you notice anything we're not noticing?
That's an interesting question. I'm not really sure how to reply to that, because I used to live in the U.S. While I studied at the Cuber School, and then I got my first job as a colorist with IDW. But as soon as I started working for them, I had to move back to Hungary because my visa expired. So I never actually lived and worked in the U.S. It's always been a long distance thing. So I feel like I didn't really interact with people enough to have an opinion about the differences. And I'm usually when I don't have enough information, I'm trying not to act like what I'm talking about. This is how I feel about the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Like, we are three white guys from Eastern Europe, so I don't feel like we are really supposed to have an opinion on what's going on. Besides, I'm just kind of baffled that in 2020, that's still a question, like that still has to be addressed, that yes, Black Lives effing matter.
Thank you.
And Victor, how about you in America? Do you really feel like we're together? Because let's be honest, right now in comics, in our own home independent comic field, we're seeing borders put up, whether it's for Comicsgate versus social justice warrior movements, whatever that means, because now they're talking about whisper networks, and the new thing is deep state comics. And I know Varian and Indie Volt are already making fun of it because they're accusing them of being deep state somehow by me. So I have a show on there on deep state comics. We are seeing division. How do you feel about that? Like, this is a moment where we can all come together, and a lot of people are coming together. There are a lot of smart people saying, stop, come together, leave all that at home. We're in election year here too, and it's not a good election year. It's not putting two of the best voices ahead. It is literally an ugly fight where no one wants to win. And we're dealing with that. And how do you see this current culture that we have around comics?
We've always had divisions, whether that was the indie versus mainstream, whether that's Black comics versus everybody else. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have, is that for the most part, us as comic book fans are typically the unpopular people. And so as a means of popularity, we draw lines to try to create a hierarchy. And it's not something that's ever really needed. We create heroes. So we should just be heroes. Like, that's really the thing that is so ironic to me, that we miss all the time. Like, we don't embody the things that we actively create, and we create opportunities of mistrust, of manipulation, all in an attempt to get ahead. We literally do so many things that are like super typical of supervillain behavior without recognizing it. And it's like, guys, let's not do that. Let's find better ways to be a unified force of creative output. It's one thing if we have differences of opinion and ideologies, even process. But when it comes to stipulating value, that's where it's really like some of the darkest things I've ever seen. The idea of Comicsgate not wanting any sort of inclusionary practices is dangerous. I think that people that are so focused on trying to be inclusive that they are not authentically telling stories is dangerous. So there's kind of like battlegrounds on both sides that really kind of miss the mark. If you are aiming to be inclusive for the sake of being inclusive, you're not being authentic with the stories, which means that the stories aren't going to be as good as they should be. And that should always be the point, is tell good stories, do good work. Yes, you can include things, you can reference things, but the point should always be to do your best. And if that's not what we're doing, we're failing the art form. And that definitely would be a failure to the future generations of creators and readers that we're hoping to inspire and bring in. Yeah,
that's perfectly said. I completely agree. And we need to go to the center. A lot more of this has to come to the center. Because, and I had a problem with the creator today over a bad operator, and he'd done an interview, and I felt he didn't do it the way I would have done it. We got in a camera together on a panel today, on one of the shows today, and we had a conversation. Mm-hmm. We told each other the different views. There didn't have to be hate. We didn't have to go to the internet and burn each other down. We had an honest conversation. We did it publicly. Right. Why doesn't that happen more? Imagine if we just got the Comicsgate leaders to sit down with the social justice warrior leaders, whatever they are, whoever they are. Imagine what they could create if they all saw and were able to work together. Imagine the beautiful work that they could tell, the opposing ideas. Let's not forget that the X-Men blew people's minds, and it was really just a metaphor for what was going on. We need more of that storytelling. Yep. When people met in the middle and had, well, what about this? Well, why don't we let Magneto say that? Because he's our bad guy, and see how people react to that. We've forgotten how to tell stories honestly, unafraid, but also in a way that doesn't tell people how to live. We are out of time. I'm sorry. This was like an awesome thing. I wish this could last all day. It's been one of my honest favorite conversations I've had in a long time. Thank you all for being part of it. We're going to go around the room and say goodbye. Go ahead and we also All-Star Comic and YouCreateComics.com are in our chat room and in our messages. Please check out both sites.
So thank you very much for watching us, and I prepared a little something for you. Oh, sorry about the shake. And this is Tomi's double splash page. He colored. Fabe was the artist on it, and thank you very much, guys. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you very much for inviting us. It really means a lot to us and indie comics in general as well.
Show off that T-shirt. That T-shirt's cool.
Yep. This will be in the campaign from, I think, tomorrow as well.
Nice. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and basically same thing. I like to thank everyone for the invitation. This is actually the first time I've ever done one of these things, so sorry about not being very wordy or anything like that. And also, I haven't been speaking any English in 20 years, so my accent is probably not the best right now. I've been only speaking Hungarian the last 20 years. But anyway, thanks for the invitation, and let's hope that next year is going to be a lot better, because this year it really sucks.
Amen. I hear that.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for this opportunity. Thank you for helping us get the word out about our comic, and thank you for including me, because like I said, I'm just a colorist. Usually no one cares about what I have to say. So thank you for letting me be part of the conversation. This was really fun.
Thank you for being part of it. And colorists are super important. They're unsung heroes. So anyone who tells you otherwise, you tell them to come talk to Uncle Rob. He'll set them straight.
That's so real. I just want to say thank you, Rob, for the invite. Thank you guys for your awesome creation. I have already backed the Kickstarter while we were talking, and I implore anybody that's in my fan circle to do the same. Check it out. It's always great to see creativity from across the globe. That's awesome. You guys can definitely find me at Vantage In-House on all things social, and we've got some cool stuff coming out too. So I'll be sharing that with you guys if we get a chance.
Thank you, Victor.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you all for being part of this. This is honestly, I'm not even saying it because you're in the room. It's one of the best conversations I've had possibly this year. Thank you for being part of it. This is why I love creativity. This is why we have comic book advocates to promote creators like you, because each and every one of you, including the colorist, are making the world a more colorful and interesting place. Thank you all for being part of the indie event. And we're going to go out with a simple message, because we've said some great stuff today. Be more than just a fan. Become an advocate for comics. Subscribe to comicbookadvocates.com, the site that puts the love of comics first.